Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete the hopefully not so unlucky 13th episode of our Rimworld Extreme Desert Challenge. And of course we have a few plans for this one. We definitely want to keep building. I think our storage room in particular needs an overhaul. And after the numerous romantic advances in the last episode, we will also do our best to keep Red Hawk away from the boys today. Her ejections have caused quite a bit of a mood penalty for both Steak and Edmo. And since we are still fairly early in the game, we don't have a lot of options to counter that. So it should be interesting to see where that part of the story goes. To start us off today, however, we are first making a bit more room inside of our storage cave, and then Edmo can totally not creep on Red Hawk while she's sleeping, and plant a few flowers inside of her bedroom. Of course, Red Hawk does not appreciate being disturbed in her sleep, but the results cannot be dismissed. The beauty rating of her bedroom has definitely improved a bit. With a bit more space inside of the storage room, we can now also bring the wood back inside. I think Red Hawk chopped that in the last episode but didn't have anywhere to put it, but it's up to Edmo now to plant new cacti. Red Hawk's plant skill is sadly not yet on the level that would allow her to do that. Now, let's jump over to colony founder Steak here, who we can see is complaining about ratty apparel. And that is because he's currently wearing a fairly tattered cloth button-down shirt, a clothing item that fortunately enough does not really add much to his heat resistance, and so we can easily get rid of it here without having to craft ourselves a replacement. After a quick breakfast, it is then time for Steak to continue researching. Yes, we will continue to focus on electricity for the time being, but again, just because we're focusing on it at the moment does not mean that we won't keep playing like this for a little while longer. Now at this point it is Red Hawk's turn to finally get up, and she immediately heads straight for the common room. Luckily though, things between her and Steak start off harmless with just a bit of chatting. Following her breakfast, she can then start mining. After all, that is what she is very passionate about, and like I said at the beginning of the video, we desperately need more storage space. A few hours later, Edmo has then finally planted the last cactus, and he has also chopped down another one. And while he's on his way back to the base, we have bad news incoming, at least for Red Hawk, because for our first event of the episode, Randy sends a psychic drone our way, a drone that unfortunately only affects females. So Red Hawk will be in a bit of a bad mood for a while, probably another good reason for Steak and Edmo not to push this whole romance thing too hard. Still, Edmo can continue to make Red Hawk's life a little easier, this time by placing her end table where it actually is useful, and thank you guys for pointing that out in the comments of the last episode. End tables do in fact only provide a comfort bonus if they are placed next to the headpiece of a bed, so this is what Edmo is doing here, improving the bed's comfort rating from 0.8 to 0.85. In the evening then, Edmo and Steak can also start some flower pot construction inside of Steak's bedroom. Yes, he does already have that big monument thing inside there, but despite its size, it doesn't actually provide that much of a beauty bonus. So with a few additional flower pots, we can definitely achieve something here. A short while later then, just as Steak is heading off to bed, all 5 pots are finished and fully planted, and we can see it here, his bedroom is now considered pretty, so our quality of life out here in the extreme desert is slowly but steadily improving. On the next morning then, we can watch Red Hawk go right back to work, first continuing to mine out the storage room, and then cutting the mined out stone chunks into smaller blocks. Steak, meanwhile, continues researching, while Edmo makes sure that the newly planted flowers actually also catch some light, and then it's time for another small construction project. Up until now, our colonists always had to walk on sand, and not only is sand a bit boring to look at, it actually also slows them down, not to mention that walking around in a sandy environment quickly makes other things dirty as well. So today we will construct ourselves a small marble walkway made from marble tiles, which not only allow our colonists to get around much faster, but which are also quite pleasant on the eye. To get us started, we'll simply connect our most important rooms, and whenever possible our colonists will then actually also use this path to get around, because again it is actually the much faster option. So while Redhawk keeps making building materials, Steak and Admo will put those materials into place, and hopefully in a few moments we will have ourselves a slightly improved base infrastructure. The whole thing does of course not go by without at least a bit of flirting, this time on Steak's part, but as always Redhawk does not seem to be interested. Outside of the base, meanwhile, Admo has harvested a bit more wood, while on the inside our small walkway system is almost finished. Before we can fully complete the construction, however, we have another event take place, and this time it is a Chinchilla migration. Here you can see them, a fairly sizable group of 20 animals, and well, since they're puny and weak and do not actually fight back when attacked, we are now sending Steak and Admo on a bit of a meat collecting trip. And for this purpose we are actually equipping Steak with the machine pistol and Admo with the thrombo horn. The machine pistol has a fast firing rate and a wide bullet spread, and accuracy is not really our primary concern with this many animals, while the thrombo horn is such a lethal melee weapon that it should normally be able to kill any chinchilla in just one hit. So let's send the two of them out and see how they do. Steak can simply blast away at whatever comes too close, while Admo slaughters his way through the rest. And yes, especially on Admo's side of things, the plan works pretty much as intended. One chop with the horn is all it takes for Chinchilla after Chinchilla to go down, while Steak himself also does a good amount of damage, and even though he doesn't kill all the time, he at least does his part in slowing the entire group down. Eventually then it is slowly getting dark and the group of chinchillas has been absolutely decimated. Of the 20 that arrived, only 4 are left at this point, and we are in fact showing mercy and letting them escape here. Hauling all the corpses back to the base will be a sizable task as well, and we should at least get started on that before everyone goes off to bed. Very fittingly indeed, Admo also excuses himself at this time. He suffers another mental break and is now wandering around in a daze, so it looks like it will be up to Steak and Redhawk to do all of the hauling. And it takes them until the early morning hours. Eventually then Redhawk is the last one to go to bed, but there are still a few more chinchilla corpses out there. A few hours later then, the psychic drone already comes to an end, although Redhawk's mood is not necessarily improving anytime soon, because in his daze Admo has decided that Redhawk's bedroom seems like the best place to constantly run in and out of. After sleeping in late, Steak meanwhile spends the afternoon hauling the remaining chinchillas into the base. Finally then he brings back corpse number 16, so I would say that food production should not be a problem for the next few days. For Redhawk it is now time to chop a bit more wood, which actually leads me to believe that we should now be able to sustain a fueled stove, which would then for example allow us to make pemmican or simple meals, and both would definitely help to improve our colonists' mood substantially. For the rest of this day though, we'll simply spend a bit more time cleaning up the base. Steak can also plant a few new cacti, and then shortly after midnight Admo finally comes out of his daze, and so he can now take over while Steak goes to bed. Admo's first encounter with the Redhawk in the early morning then goes about as one would have expected, and I agree that is no way to start off your day, so Admo does the only sensible thing and goes right back to sleep. Now just in that moment we receive a quest, and it has the word Rhinoceros in it, so we are definitely going to check it out. And the task here is actually quite simple. All we have to do is kill 3 man-hunting rhinoceroses, and we'll even receive 3 troopers to help out with that. And honestly, if we're careful, I think those troopers should already be enough to take care of things on their own, so potentially we don't even have to put any of our colonists in danger. Not to mention that the list of potential rewards here is also pretty neat. I am currently leaning towards the tech print though, not only because it has the highest value attached to it, but also because the others don't really strike me as that useful, at least for the moment. Just in case we need to get involved though, let's equip Steak and Admo with some long-range weaponry. We certainly do not want to engage the rhinos with a thrombo horn and a machine pistol. While they're picking up their weapons, we can also see Steak making more advances, but as usual, they do not result in anything. So at this point, I think we're ready for some action. Again, in terms of rewards, the tech print seems like the best option to me. Royal favor is something we don't really need at the moment, and the same is true for advanced components. While the field hand here is actually somewhat useful for a dedicated farmer, but it also comes with a movement speed penalty, and when the time comes we can always craft one ourselves. So let's go with the tech print here, we cannot collect that any other way, and then we'll see how this goes. Right, so first things first, we have our 3 troopers arrive here, and all 3 of them look like they can hold their own. The rhinos have not yet arrived, but they will in just a moment, and while our colony is anxiously waiting, one of the reinforcement guys is actually throwing a party, so we might get a tiny mood bonus out of this. Unfortunately though, the party is called off just a few moments later, because here they are, the objective of our quest, 3 man-hunting rhinos. And since they're faster than any of our colonists and also than the troopers, we can sadly not engage in any hit and run tactics, so let's get everyone inside of the base and wait for them to come to us. Right, so here they are now roaming around to the south of our base, which means we can safely exit with our troopers in the north. This will of course immediately draw their attention, but with the right timing we can make sure that the rhinos do not all engage at once. And even though a single rhinoceros is a formidable foe, it does not really stand a chance in a 3-on-1 firefight, and you can see what I mean right here. The first animal already goes down before the other 2 have made it over. Additionally, one of our traps now comes into play, and for some reason it sends rhino number 3 on a bit of a detour, which allows our 3 troopers to focus their fire on the one that's currently attacking them. And yes, of course they do take a few hits, but eventually they win this fight as well, so all we have left to do at this point is to simply finish off the 3rd rhino. And there we go, all manhunters are down and our quest has been completed. Even better, one of the animal corpses did not even rot upon death, so unlike the other 2, we can now actually turn that one into consumable meat. Additionally, we do of course also receive our tech print while the 3 troopers have already left again, so let's bring that tech print to the workbench and learn the secrets of compact weaponry. And there we go. Of course, we now still have to research this technology, but previously we were not even able to do that. Steak has also gained a few experience points for his intellectual skill, bringing him up to level 11, so just like Cambia before him, he will likely spend quite a few more hours at the research bench in the future. Now, with the rhino corpse hauled back into the base, we can now bring in our first heal root harvest, and since Edmo is already going back to bed, Redhawk will take care of things. Now, in one of the previous episodes, some raiders actually laid fire to this field, so that is why not all of the plants here do actually yield something. In the end though, Redhawk still comes away with 6 units of herbal medicine, so our medicine supplies are looking solid for the moment. Just a few hours later then, Edmo is already awake again. That whole mental break affair definitely screwed up his sleep schedule, but he actually arrives just in time, and no, not to plan new heal route, but instead to start butchering all of the chinchillas. We still have a few hours left until the corpses start to rot, but Edmo also has 16 corpses to go through, so to speed up the process we are bringing the butcher table back into the storage room. That way we have slightly shorter hauling trips and the butchering process should be a bit more efficient. And indeed, Edmo is progressing quite rapidly, until he is interrupted by yet another quest. Now for this one we have to construct a fairly large monument. A size of 13 by 7 is definitely no joke, and even though I think we should be able to find the necessary building materials, I am not convinced that this is a good quest for us. because not only do we have to build the monument, we also have to protect it for 50 days, which in Rimworld is almost an entire in-game year. Now, realistically, I don't think that it will be exposed to too much danger during that time, but the size alone will probably lead to it blocking valuable building space. In the end, one quick look at the rewards section here confirmed my initial impulse. I really don't think this is worth it, so let us instead focus on building structures that actually benefit us. For the moment though, we can watch Edmo wrap up his butchering work, before he then passes by Redhawk, not without another flirtatious remark of course, and eventually starts planting new heel root. Redhawk herself meanwhile has hauled a bit more stuff into the storage room and is now making more building materials, before she can then continue mining. As you can see, even with the recent expansion, our storage room is once again reaching its maximum capacity, so let's expand even further. At the moment we still have a bit of room. And while Edmo here is making kibble, I can also add that this storage room expansion is in fact not increasing our risk of infestation. About 80 to 90% of the storage room here are actually underneath a thin rock roof, and not underneath overhead mountain, which would be needed to spawn infestations. And so the day progresses with cooking, mining and researching. In the afternoon then, Edmo has finished his task, and shortly after he also already goes back to bed. Not for long though, because A, we need to normalize his sleep schedule again, and B, we have some cotton to harvest. As you can see, every cotton plant here yields 8 units of cloth, so in total we should be able to obtain a healthy amount here. It also helps Edmo to advance his plant skill to level 12, although looking at the rest of his skills, he still remains an incredibly versatile colonist, so I think you can understand that I don't want to confine him too much in that gardener role. In any case, with the help of Steak, all of that cotton is quickly hauled back into the base, and despite the fact that a good third of the plants here have not yet fully matured, we were still able to harvest almost 200 units of cloth. So definitely another productive day for our colony here, as we can now skip ahead to the next morning. And on that morning we can now bring in the rest of the cotton harvest, while Redhawk replants the flowers in her bedroom and Steak focuses on meditation. Eventually then we have a grand total of 319 units of cloth in our storage room, which should be enough to craft 3 new dusters for example, so our 3 colonists will remain protected from the heat for the foreseeable future. Now at this point we can continue building with a wall that separates our stone cutting area from the rest of the base. The idea is to also mine out the rest of the mountain here, including that patch of compacted machinery, so that everything left of that wall will eventually also become storage space. For that purpose, we can also already construct a wall around those pieces of mountain that will eventually be mined away. This will then make sure that we don't suffer any roof collapses while Redhawk is mining. And this is pretty much how we progress into the early evening, where we are now once again facing the task of food production. To avoid spoilage, the Rhinoceros corpse has to be butchered at this point, and we also have to force harvest our field of rice again, because the remaining Chinchilla meat is also about to go bad. This is, by the way, also the main reason we have not switched from rice to potatoes yet, which are in fact a lot more efficient in the desert, because the fast growing time of rice allows us to be very flexible in our food production, and it also enables us to react to things like a sudden influx of meat, for example. This time, Steak is the one taking care of the kibble making process, always making sure, of course, not to use the fresh rhinoceros meat. Eventually then, Steak heads off to bed and trades places with Edmo, who is slightly better rested, and well, we also don't really have any other choice here. If we don't take care of this now, the meat will go bad and we will be left with nothing. Before we send Edmo back to bed, we also want to make sure that at least the meat is hauled back underneath a roof, and then we can watch him go to sleep, while the remaining 14 units of Chinchilla meat quietly rot away. On the next morning then, we are making a slight adjustment to Steak's meditation schedule, in the sense that we are setting his psi focus target to 0, meaning that he will now no longer meditate at all, but also meaning that he will no longer be able to use psychic abilities until we change that again. The simple reason is that we're not really using psychic abilities that often lately, while the time spent on meditation is actually taking up a fairly sizable chunk of Steak's schedule. So at least for the moment, I don't really think that time investment is worth it. However, as with all things, that can of course change in the future. Now, while Steak goes back to research and Redhawk is sowing out new rice plants, we have a royal tribute collector arrive, who will gladly accept prisoners or gold as tribute. Now, we're not going to give them either one of those, prisoners for the simple reason that we don't have any, and gold for the simple reason that we don't have enough to make a difference, so their group here will simply stick around for a while and then eventually leave again. If we're lucky, they might be able to assist in a raid or a quest while they're here, but realistically, we should expect them to simply leave again empty-handed. Back in the base, meanwhile, we have Redhawk harvesting a bit more wood, and we have Edmo suffering, yes, another mental break. And honestly, I don't think the steady diet of kibble is the only problem for him. You can see it here, the constant rejections by Redhawk are certainly getting to him as well, and if this remains something that we can absolutely not get under control, then perhaps we either have to think about getting rid of Redhawk again, or at least focus even more on limiting the contact between her and the two others. Or perhaps we can also simply wait for that problem to solve itself, which it may have just done. Yes, after countless attempts by Steak, this time Redhawk actually initiated the flirting. She successfully boasted about her own muscles and Steak responded positively, and so the two of them now consider themselves lovers. Now, I'm not quite sure how Edmo will react to that, but at least for the moment he is otherwise occupied, so let us instead focus on restructuring our bedrooms a bit, so that they are a bit more suitable for our new couple. First of all, as a bit of a consolation prize perhaps, we can gift Steak's good quality bed over to Edmo, while Steak himself grabs the slightly higher quality furniture out of Redhawk's bedroom. Using our self-grown 100% organic cactus wood, we are then constructing a double bed for Redhawk and Steak, because as proper lovers, they of course want to share a bed. And that bed is quickly constructed and it is of normal quality, with a pretty good comfort rating of 0.85, boosted by the dresser and the end table. Redhawk's former bedroom, meanwhile, can now become a bit of a prison cell, perhaps a hospital, depending on the situation. With the proper placement of beds and furniture, we are making sure at least that whoever ends up here will have it comfortable. Now, over in the storage room, we can see that Redhawk is making good progress mining, so much in fact that we can now already construct a small stone cutting room. This will serve as a separate working area for us to produce building materials, an area that will not suffer the beauty penalties caused by the rest of our stored items. Down the line, we might also be able to turn this into a kitchen, but for the moment I think this here is a solid purpose. And with this small working area constructed, we are now nearing the end of the episode. Redhawk and Steak are now about to spend their very first night together, and what better way would there be to end an episode than with newfound love? So let us make the cut right here and hope that our two new lovers find happiness, and perhaps also that Edmo does not become too jealous. So this will be where we continue things next time. For today, of course, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, or perhaps also check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.